I recently spoke with Jake, a 42-year-old sociologist and author who spent years researching the social and psychological shifts in modern society. Jake is single by choice and by circumstance, and he's deeply concerned about the growing number of single adults, particularly men in the modern age. He shared his perspective on this phenomenon, weaving in theories about population control, reduction, and social engineering. Jake started off strong. The fact that we're seeing an increasing number of single men and women, projected to be over 50% of adults in the next few years, isn't some organic evolution of society. It's orchestrated. Look at the patterns. Social structures that supported traditional relationships are being dismantled, intentionally or not, by forces that benefit from a fragmented population. I asked him to elaborate, and he didn't hold back. Think about it. Relationships, stable, long-term ones, serve as the bedrock of societies. They create families, foster communities, and provide emotional and financial stability. When you disrupt this foundation, you create isolated individuals who are easier to market to, control, and manipulate. Singles spend more. They're less likely to push back against authority because they lack the familial support system that gives people courage. Jake backed his claims with economic and sociological observations. The rise of dating apps, for example, is a symptom of a larger issue. On the surface, they appear to facilitate connections, but in reality, they commodify relationships. People swipe endlessly, treating each other like products, which dehumanizes the whole experience. The result? More disillusionment, less trust, and fewer long-term commitments. The people profiting off this are tech giants and advertisers. He paused, then added, and let's not ignore the economic angle. Single people, particularly single men, are often more willing to work longer hours and spend more money. Married men are more likely to save, invest, and focus on legacy. But single men, they're prime targets for consumerism, whether it's flashy cars, gaming consoles, or fast fashion. This isn't by accident. The market loves unattached people because they're easier to exploit. Jake then shifted to darker theories. If you really want to go down the rabbit hole, consider the possibility of population control. Societies with declining birth rates are easier to manage. When fewer children are born, there's less strain on resources, fewer people to rise up against inequality, and a smaller middle class to disrupt the elite. It's not far-fetched to suggest that encouraging singleness and discouraging traditional families is part of a broader strategy to keep populations small and compliant. I asked Jake about the role of social engineering in all of this. He nodded emphatically. Absolutely, social engineering is everywhere. Look at media narratives. The independent single man is portrayed as cool and desirable, while the married guy is often a punchline. At the same time, traditional male traits, ambition, assertiveness, even protectiveness, are being demonized. Men are told they're toxic just for being themselves, and it's creating a generation of men who are afraid to approach women, afraid to commit, and ultimately afraid to build. Jake also touched on technology's impact. The rise of social media has replaced real-life interactions. Men are bombarded with unrealistic standards of beauty and success. Women, too, are inundated with toxic messaging about independence at all costs. It's a feedback loop of dissatisfaction, where no one feels good enough to even try. This is by design. Divide and conquer has always been a strategy of the powerful, and now it's being applied to gender and relationships. When I asked Jake about solutions, he leaned forward, his tone serious. It starts with awareness. People need to see the bigger picture. Men especially need to reclaim their roles, not as dominators, but as builders, protectors, and partners. We also need to demand better media narratives that celebrate relationships and families. And honestly, we need to push back against the tech giants and corporations that profit from our loneliness. Jake also offered a controversial idea. Look, if we're serious about reversing this trend, we need to reconsider how wealth and resources are distributed. Right now, the elite hoard everything, leaving the rest of us to scramble for crumbs. If we redistributed wealth more effectively, people would feel less financial pressure and more freedom to form meaningful connections. And yes, this includes rethinking how we tax inheritances and estates. If the government can take your property, why not use it to build stronger communities? Jake ended with a hopeful note. We're at a crossroads. The single population is rising, but it's not inevitable. We can fight back by fostering community, rejecting toxic narratives, and he's demanding accountability from the systems that profit from our isolation. It's not about going back to the past. It's about building a future where relationships and families are valued, not undermined.